Welcome to this milestone episode 25 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm JC, and I'm already exhausted before we've started recording this episode.
And I'm Rod. I'm also pretty tired, but mostly from traveling. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, building up to the release of X-Men 97 coming to Disney Plus in 2023.
Some quick reminders. We are a recap show about a series that came out over 28 years ago. There will be spoilers, especially today, because this is the second part of a two-part episode for us, covering 5 episodes of the show. If you don't want it spoiled for you at this point, tough shit, pause the podcast, watch the episodes, and come back, and we will do our best to avoid spoiling anything about future episodes of the show that we have not covered yet. You guys know we're not affiliated or sponsored by Disney at this point. They're not going to sponsor us.
But we could do a better version of the Phoenix Saga than any of the Fox ones did.
That's why Fox no longer exists, because they twice fucked up the Phoenix Saga.
From the same guy.
Yeah, that was a plan.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. And make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services. And finally, we record these episodes in batches right now. So if we're reacting to any of the upcoming series news and stuff, we're probably a few weeks behind.
I think at this point, we're like literally 2 months behind if we were to react to it. So let's not react to any news today.
There you go.
We got enough stuff to talk about at this point. On to the show. We are going to be continuing our recap and discussion about the Phoenix Saga. And since it was 5 full-length episodes, we divided this into 2 parts. Today, we're going to be talking about episodes 5, 6, and 7 of Season 3, titled The Cry of the Banshee, The Starjammers, and Child of Light. They aired on September 7th, 8th, and 9th in 1994 as a part of a week-long afternoon event. They currently all sit at a 8.0, 7.9, and 8.4 star rating on IMDb.
See, these 8s make sense and not the fake out Mojo Vision things we had a few weeks ago.
I am very much behind the Mojo Vision episode. Even if that was not accurate, I don't care what you say. So, first off, Cry of the Banshee. This one picks up from an alternate perspective where our previous episode picked up, where Sean and Moira are worried about Xavier's jealousy and then proceed to make out within line of sight of his window.
And a beautifully set up shot, too.
Yeah.
The ocean and everything.
They're completely oblivious to what is going on in Xavier's room, where the Juggernaut has tried abducting Lilandra, who is able to shoot the helmet off of his head. So good on her. Then also, random outfit change where her clothing just changed for no explanation.
So maybe this is a good time to bring this up, because D'Ken and Lilandra, they're both Shi'ar. They have like spider-themed outfits, even though they descended from birds. Is there a reason for that, do you know, or is that just a design thing?
I don't want to say there isn't a reason.
Okay.
I don't know.
But there's not a big reason.
So interestingly enough, I have only read like the Phoenix Saga and the Dark Phoenix Saga, and then a lot of the Shi'ar stuff that I've read in the years like starting in 2005-ish. D'Ken is not a major player within the Shi'ar. There's references to him, but it's very much Lilandra, the third Summers brother, what's her name? Deathbird, who is Lilandra's very insane sister.
I remember that from the video games.
Yeah, D'Ken, not as big of an issue.
So 90s design choice.
I mean, I think technically they predate the 90s.
No, I mean like in the show.
Right, but I'm saying the design existed before the show.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Right. But aside from fashion choices, Lilandra was able to shoot the helmet off of the Juggernaut's head. Xavier is able to put the Juggernaut into a bunch of pain because he was getting cock-blocked by his brother, or half-brother. At that point, a mysterious figure, who we will go into details of who that is in a second, shoots Xavier from behind. With Xavier kind of knocked out, Juggernaut just picks him up and throws him out a window.
Yep, off the cliff.
There's so many cliffs at Muir Island. It is not a safe area. Luckily, we get the reveal that Sean is actually the Banshee.
Not luckily for some of us. That scream is horrid.
That scream is awful. So how did your cat react to you watching the episode?
That one, not so bad, because like Rogue's scream is super high pitched. This one was just grating. Like, not great. Like, it was just annoying because it was like lower pitched. He was like, like, I don't know. It wasn't pleasant.
Did you have experience with Banshee outside of the show?
Yes. Well, yes, but I don't know what came first. I know my brother and I, once again, gets back to the action figures. I just remember the action figure had like that whistle in it.
I don't think I ever had that one, so I don't remember the whistle.
It had its arms like pop up, like spring loaded,
right?
The things.
Yeah.
And then I think it had a whistle on the inside that you blew on, which is not accurate at all because it wasn't high pitched or anything. But I remember at least my brother really loving the action figure, and so that's how I knew about Banshee. And I don't know which solidified it first, the action figure or the show. But I recognized him this time immediately, even before when he was just Sean.
So Banshee makes the save, and then they proceed to like berate Xavier because they don't believe him. They didn't see the attack happen. They just saw him flying out the window.
Yeah.
Did they just assume he chucked himself out the window?
I guess to their credit, he went there because he couldn't be trusted.
It's true.
But at the same time, I would have thought maybe it's just because it was so early on in his trip that they weren't surveilling him yet.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, if you can't trust someone's like experiences, then you would probably get their permission to like put a camera on them, right?
Yeah. I mean, good for them though of adding in the reminder about worrying about his jealousy. Mm-hmm. Because Moira actually says like, she doesn't believe him and is worried that he's just acting out because he still loves her.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Right. So back to the hospital in New York, Phoenix talking to Cyclops and saying, now we are one. And Scott instantly jumps to what happens to us.
Yeah. It's like we were supposed to get married again.
Yeah. We get Rogue back into the story. Rogue is blaming herself because she was out on that mission and not there to help. I don't know what Rogue thought she could have done.
Right. Well, I mean, last time she flew a plane,
it didn't go very well.
She just can't take care of things.
Yeah. But yeah, at that point, we get Xavier, who's telepathically calling Wolverine for help, tells him he needs to come to Muir Island. Wolverine shares the news, and then we hear the phrase that I don't think anybody ever expected to hear, which is Cyclops saying, Wolverine is right.
Yeah. And then Gambit's like, whoa.
Everybody is like, we've all gone insane at this point. If Scott says Wolverine is right, we've all lost our minds.
Because I think the argument there was Professor Xavier literally just told us not to trust him, so we shouldn't go. And Wolverine's like, maybe we should,
Yeah. So in addition to saying that Wolverine is right, Scott, that's what it is. It's because somebody said, well, are we supposed to trust him? And Scott says, no, Wolverine is right. We need to check this out. But Storm and Scott are going to stay back in New York with Jean and Beast. Over in this castle in Scotland, we see Eric the Red, and he's negotiating with who we find out is Black Tom Cassidy. Mm-hmm. That's the character's name. And Black Tom Cassidy is a long-standing X-Men villain, also known in particular for teaming up with the Juggernaut too at different times. They kind of were like a little bit of a duo together. So, you had the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which was usually Mastermind, Toad, working with Magneto. Blob was usually in that one, but they were kind of like the side duo.
They're kind of like the Avalanche Pyro thing in the show where they're always like together.
Yeah, they in the comics, they were paired up very often. Yeah. So Eric is basically like, yeah, I'm not going to pay you. Just give me Lilandra. Juggernaut, showcasing how strong he is, just shows up and makes the save and just squeezes Eric.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, maybe we can negotiate.
Yeah, maybe I'll pay.
But then my favorite moment of the entire thing, it's for $10 million.
Yeah. It's like a Dr. Evil, $10 million.
Right. Which, I mean, okay, probably for a kid hearing that number.
Yeah.
But, that I think at that point we probably assumed like somebody like Bill Gates was only worth like $15 million.
Yeah.
So it was like $10 million. 1994, inflation. So we hear an alternate music sting as the X-Men arrive at Muir Island. Wolverine and Banshee have this like little interaction that I know you liked.
Yeah. Moira's like, you shouldn't have come. And then Wolverine kind of tells him off. And Banshee's like, you should learn some manners. It's like, you don't know him very well. I was going to slit your throat out.
Yeah. So we've established that the X-Men have made it there. Mm-hmm. The Blackbird is fast as frig. Over in the castle again, Eric is awakening Lilandra. We find out that he has been using a alternate name while being stationed as a spy on Earth.
Mm-hmm. So he goes by Eric the Red, but his real name is Shikari.
Right.
So I love that he's like, I'm going to go to Earth. My name's going to be Eric.
Is there something where he's been stationed? Like, is Eric the Red like some like Viking or something? Like there's something about this character that didn't make it into the show that neither of us looked up because one, I think I just don't care enough about Eric the Red, and Rod doesn't look anything up. But, he says that, we're we're looking for the crystal, and it's not with Lilandra at this point. The argument continues back at the installation. Installation seems right. And Wolverine gives some credence to the fact that somebody else was there. He says he smelled 3 people. One is definitely the Juggernaut, which we've actually talked about with Wolverine in the Juggernaut's first appearance of he distinctly remembers the smell of the Juggernaut.
Yeah.
One that he doesn't recognize and one that is definitely not human. And at that point, psychic distress call pops out from Lilandra, who showcases a stag and a dragon. So when Professor X sees this, he says it out loud, and Sean instantly knows where that is because that is where Cassidy Keep is.
And we cut over to the Great Hall of Cassidy Keep, and I only know that because they specifically captioned it.
Yeah, there's a sign that says Cassidy Keep, just in case you live in the area and you don't know which castle you're walking by.
Right. And as they're arriving, Wolverine has the response that most of us have in response to Banshee flying. He's like, What is this? Well,
because he's yelling the entire time he's flying. And I don't even want to replicate it because most people are probably listening to this on earbuds or in their car.
Yeah.
And there's no way for us to replicate it and it not be unpleasant. So just imagine a very low, guttural, ongoing tone.
Yeah, and you're flying that way for miles. And Wolverine...
Even if it's 30 seconds, it's awful.
Even Wolverine points out, well, we're not going to exactly sneak attack with this.
So they're arriving at the keep. There's the acknowledgement that they know they're no match for the Juggernaut. Because looking back, the last time that they fought the Juggernaut, Jean was there.
Yeah, and I also like that there's a comment. Someone asks, how do we know who we're saving? And Wolverine's... this might be one of my favorite Wolverine quotes, just the way he said it. He's like, she's from another galaxy. You see a woman you don't know? Rescue her.
So when they arrive at the keep, it is a trap that gets sprung by the space crew. Mm-hmm. Banshee makes the save.
At 1 frame a second.
Yeah, there were definitely a few times in these episodes where there are animation hiccups. Nice way to say it. But he has a really awesome line where it's, the Lord of the Castles come home.
Yeah.
And then the fight breaks out. Rogue proceeds to call Juggernaut fat, which... There is a habit of calling people names that are insults that don't necessarily make sense. Because he's
big.
He's a brick shithouse, but he's not fat.
Yeah, and she's fought the Blob a couple times.
Yeah.
So she has actual examples.
We do get the brother fight between Black Tom Cassidy and Sean Cassidy, but quick note, in the comics, they are actually cousins and not brothers to each other.
Ooh, okay. So that was just an editorial thing for this.
I believe it was to give the brother versus brother drama of it, especially because in the Phoenix Saga, there was a brother versus brother story that did happen where Cyclops was fighting his brother Havoc in one of the issues. And because we haven't included Havoc here at all, obviously you don't need to have that drama.
And we don't want to throw another location into this to bring him in.
I mean, at that point, Havoc was X Factor.
Yeah.
So
introduce a whole other team on top of that.
Or actually, would he have been X Factor at that point? I don't know. Timelines get confusing. Regardless, with the brother versus brother fight, Lilandra is able to untie herself. Juggernaut, essentially stops her. Eric the Red throws an ice bomb, which I was like, Rod is going to make a Sub-Zero comment.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. It's also that's more accurate than you think because it was so temporary. It was almost inconsequential.
It was enough to slow them down.
Yeah.
And it was probably easier to animate than fog or mist and stuff like that.
And also Storm has used her mist thing for her quota or whatever.
So Rogue and Wolverine are the first ones to break out, but everybody is able to break out and they all head up to the roof. And then we see this glow from space. At that point, did you know who that was in space?
Only when I saw the gloves.
Right. So we get kind of a first person perspective and it ends up being Gladiator, which we saw Gladiator in the Mojoverse. Mojo Vision episode.
The 8-star rated Mojo Vision.
That's why it got so many stars. And for those who aren't aware, Gladiator from a power set is effectively Superman. Mm-hmm. He's got a cape, he's got laser eyes, he has frost wind breath and stuff like that. He is the Shi'ar version of Superman.
I only remember that too because on one of either the trading cards or board game I had, his stats were they were all maxed out.
I would bet it would have been the Marvel or X-Men trading cards that after Series 2 they started putting stats, and he was I want to say it was everything except intelligence was like a 7 for him.
Yeah, they had like light beams going across the stats.
Yeah. And his intelligence was still really high. He just wasn't like 7 on it. Yeah. So he shows up. Eric the Red just like straight up stops and bows to him. And then Gladiator's like, oh, the Emperor and I are disappointed in you. And, you know, there's a moment between him and Lilandra, and he's like, nope, sorry, I serve the Imperial throne. And she's like, oh, well, fuck me, I guess. Right. Juggernaut is not having this, proceeds to throw a punch at Gladiator and does literally nothing. And Gladiator responds by throwing Juggernaut across the entire island at that point.
He's gone by that point.
He then proceeds to use, like I said, the wind powers from his mouth, the eye blast. He starts like kicking people's ass, and Black Tom Cassidy's like, nope, I'm out. And just completely runs away. He does the classic villain, like, this is not worth $10 million.
He's like a Khazar. Later. Run away with my tiger.
Lilandra puts out another call for help. Jean hears the call for help and essentially wakes up in full Phoenix mode, and then just pops up.
Yeah, flies across the entire Earth.
Yeah, she flew.
Well, not the entire, like a quarter. Because from New York to Scotland.
Yeah, well, she flew across the Atlantic in no time flat, and tells Gladiator, like, you know, they're under my protection. Gladiator doesn't really want to buy that and proceeds to attack and does absolutely nothing. Phoenix says, you know, tell your master to abandon his quest, and then throws him into space.
Right.
If there was ever a, like, fuck Superman moment, that was it right there.
And it looked like threw him past like some planets.
Yeah, he was like into space. It wasn't just like into orbit, it was space. We find out a little bit more from Lilandra about the Phoenix, acknowledging that the Phoenix is the child of the crystal. And that's when we see in space, D'Ken pops out of a wormhole.
It says he can sense the crystal's power.
Right. So before we jump to the next episode, one quick note. When they were doing the original scripting for the episode, the feedback from the producers was the castle either needs to be entirely dropped or made integral to the episode.
Why?
I don't know. It's just what Eric Lewald said.
Okay. It's like, this detail needs to have significance.
It's either it has to have significance or do the fight in a different spot.
Huh, interesting. I wonder if there was like some, censor thing at the time.
I think it was just probably like, we don't want to have to pay for more backgrounds unless you make the shit mean something.
Gotcha. Okay, so the brothers live here.
Yeah. The man of the manor, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Before we go on, Rod, any thoughts on this episode?
I like that we introduced like a lot of characters, and also finding out that Eric's name wasn't Eric, because Tom may be okay, but I just thought it was so hilarious that this episode we learn about these characters and then like D'Ken and Lilandra and stuff, and then we have Eric and Tom.
So, part 4 episode is called Starjammers. Marvel, in particular, wanted the Starjammers involved in this story.
Oh, that's cool. It's a cool name.
It's a cool name. It's also the name of the team is also the name of the ship.
That was confusing for a little bit because I saw the title and then someone mentioned that they were the Starjammers, and they're like, get back to the Starjammers. I was like, did you?
Yep.
Okay.
So, episode kicks off with Black Tom Cassidy running away. Just in case you were wondering what's going on with him. Let's assume that he is on his way to go get Juggernaut.
Sure.
Maybe? So, everybody is up on the roof. Xavier's there. Jean says that she could get everybody to Lilandra's ship. At that point, we have Scott, Beast, basically everybody else makes their way over. At that point, Jean is trying to, see what is going on. She tries to channel into Gladiator. They see who we know is the Imperial Guard, and then gets shut out. So, Rob, let's play a little game of name any of the Imperial Guard aside from Gladiator.
I don't know. These last 2 episodes it is insane how many characters that you clearly should know. John is putting the figure set in front of me.
So there is a HeroClix base that has, 6 members of the Imperial Guard on it?
7.
7 members of the Imperial Guard on it. One is Gladiator.
Yeah, I know Gladiator. I think in passing conversations, so it's a little bit of a cheat. I've heard you mention Oracle.
Yep, Oracle, who is the one who shut them out, which is Oracle on the base.
Is that her?
That's Oracle, yep.
I don't know the other people, even though I recognize them from the show.
So the one who always stood out the most to me is Warstar, and Warstar is this, like, the giant green one who has a little, like, baby alien on his back.
Yeah, that comes up a little bit later.
Right.
In the fight.
Yeah, in the fight. So we get the very blunt and dramatic statement of this is going to be the battle to save the galaxy. It's going to be the fate of 1 billion star systems. So automatically the stakes are so much higher than anything that we've ever talked about on this show in particular. Like, you know, at most it was going to be like Sentinels taking over the world, or even just the future of this Earth, you know, looking at the Time Fugitives episodes and stuff like that. This is now, it's everything. So there's like a little farewell moment, and they just are going to take off into space.
Yeah, she flies them into like that. She does this thing where she like puts her wings around them, and it looks like fire, so it would kill them, but actually like teleports them.
It envelops them, yeah. So
I think I knew these cameos.
Right. So there are 3 cameos which pop up because as Jean takes off into space, you see her flying off into the sky. Rod, let's go.
Was the first one Captain Britain?
The first one is Captain Britain.
And then I saw Emma Frost, so I'm assuming that was the Hellfire Club.
Correct. You definitely see Emma Frost. There is somebody who looks like Sebastian Shaw, who is I believe he's the Black King of the Hellfire Club. At that point, Emma was known only as a villain, so she was still in like full-fledged White Queen mode.
And she actually gets a little bit of a reaction, like a psychic reaction at that moment. And then Doctor Strange, which that was really cool to see, because I don't remember him there as a kid because he wasn't as popular back then.
It's true. No, he had like a big moment in the 70s because of like all the very trippy, like Kirby-esque art.
Yeah.
But then he definitely had a drop off in the 80s and 90s. So pre him coming back to where he is now. And then we have a moment with Jubilee and Xavier who are left back on Earth. And it's essentially like, oh, she said farewell, like they're not coming back ever.
Yeah. And
I think she like blows a bubble on the edge of the castle as she's like looking out too. It's like super sad.
Then the crew that was with the Phoenix appear on Lalandra's ship, and then we see the crystal finally for the first time, like in person.
Right. So the crew that made it onto the ship was Wolverine, Rogue, Gambit, Cyclops, Jean, alongside Lalandra.
And apparently a Phoenix possessed by Lalandra for a second.
Yeah, so there is probably the first time there's been a VO flub of putting the wrong voice on top of the wrong animation.
Specifically on the line, we must move quickly to protect the crystal.
Yeah, and it was Jean's animation with Lalandra's voice. So we then kind of get a surprise attack on the ship, and it isn't what we thought it would be. It's actually a stun ray, and all of the Shi'ar on the ship kind of get like knocked out. Everybody else is like shaken, but it specifically puts down all the Shi'ar. And then, Rod, favorite game, who are the Starjammers?
So I recognize Corsair because of the action figure, then Cat Lady and Reptile Man. Cat Lady I feel justified for because they went out of their way to highlight her sound specifically.
She is feline. I have no pushback on that sentiment.
She screeches comedically like a cat the whole fight.
Yeah. So that's Hezbollah.
Okay.
Hepzibah.
Hepzibah. Okay. Hezbollah.
Yep. And then I found out from the show, I had been saying his name wrong for years, but the giant reptile guy, which I feel like reptile guy sounds more of like a lizard man kind of thing. He's like giant amphibious, but his name is Chode, which I always pronounced it as Chad.
It took me until like really late in like the 5th episode to get that, because I thought they were just insulting him for like the first couple times.
No.
Just because I'm a kid in the 90s, you know, so like they called him a chode.
No, it's literally his name, Rod. And then
quick too, there's a line from Rogue that I haven't heard a cool line from Rogue in a while. So she says when Lalandra gets knocked out by the stun ray that just gets the Shi'ar, the Rogue's like, Lalandra's out colder than the leftover hush puppy.
Oh yeah, she had to throw in one of her, what are they called?
Like Southern.
It's not a euphemism, colloquialism.
Yeah. And I specifically remember like the hush puppies at Long John Silver. So like, yeah, she's cold like that.
So there's, a quick fight. They realize that it's not the Emperor's troops who are doing it, and it's revealed that they are the Starjammers, who are pirates. And then you have the last Starjammer on the ship, whose name is Raza, and Corsair tells him to switch the stun to human. Raza kind of like gives a little bit of pushback, and he's like, just do it. At that point, Scott is ready to take a shot at Corsair, and Jean stops him. She sees images of kids in Corsair's head, and that one hesitation...
One has sunglasses on.
One has sunglasses on. But that hesitation is what leads to all the X-Men getting stunned, because mutants are human,
Yeah.
And this further proves that.
Yeah.
Because it's set to human and all the X-Men who are mutants get knocked out.
Even science.
So the Starjammers retreat. They have stolen the crystal, and they also bring Scott with them. You get a little bit of an internal monologue where Jean acknowledges that that's Scott's dad.
More of the sci-fi soap opera stuff.
Right. They bring Scott onto the ship, and they're like, well, why'd you bring, without calling him this, they're like, why'd you bring the flesh bag? And it's like, well, he's the last weapon we're ever going to need.
He like cradles his face. So then Gladiator and Eric the Red, or Shikari, or what do you want to call him?
Let's call him Eric.
Eric.
Just make it easier.
Arrive at Teken's ship. Teken is angry.
Yeah, he's pissed because they don't have the
Anything.
crystal. Yeah, they have nothing. They failed.
They're like, the Phoenix stopped us. It's like the Phoenix is just a fairy tale.
Yeah, it's just a legend. And Gladiator has the unenviable position of, no, I saw it. When you know your boss is super, super wrong, and there's nothing you could say other than, no, dude, you're wrong.
Yeah, it was definitely a shoot the messenger feeling, and I've been the messenger many a time in a Deja.
I've also shot Rod many times. I always go for the leg, though. You go for the meat. You don't want anything fatal, because then he can't give you messages anymore. But kind of to save Gladiator and Eric's asses a little bit, a Corsair pops up, which that's a major league hacking software for him to be able to have his the hologram pop up right in the middle of that conversation. And he's like, hey, recognize this? Mm-hmm. And he's got the crystal. And of course, Teken is like, well, yes, I want the crystal.
Yeah.
And Corsair goes big. He wants half of the Imperial treasury, which, just for context, Shi'ar controls multiple star systems. So it's not like the richest city or the richest country or the richest planet. It's like the richest planet within a full star system.
Yeah. He wants to split power with the Shi'ar.
I don't think he even cares about the power. He just literally wants the check.
Well, I mean, with the money, though, having that much.
No, he's just going to buy so many space hookers.
Right. And the entire galaxy is capitalist.
Right. So Teken begrudgingly accepts the trade. And as soon as Corsair is gone, which I would be worried about him listening in. If the dude could suddenly hack onto my wristband thing, I don't trust that they're not listening at all times. But he tells Gladiator that as soon as the trade is made, destroy them.
Yeah. And
Gladiator kind of gives a little bit of pushback of like, but you swore the sacred oath. And Teken kind of is just like, oh, are you not my leader of the Imperial Guard? Are you gonna defy the crown kind of thing? And Gladiator falls into place. So Scott wakes up on Corsair's ship, and Corsair is like, yeah, I'm gonna use you to stop Teken. Mm-hmm. And of course, Scott is curious as to why, and we get a little more insight where Teken is like, yeah, he destroyed my wife. You're going to get one shot at this.
And then Cyclops pushes back. He's like, I'm not going to take a life in cold blood. I would question that a little bit right now because so much stuff has happened. I guess it's enough to question, but also that man is responsible for your kind of wife being possessed, as far as you know, and stuff, and, trying to kill everybody and things. Wouldn't be the worst thing to do is to start taking out some pawns in this. Also,
he literally tried to murder Sinister multiple times and then saw Sinister explode.
Yeah. So it's not... Did he not consider Sinister?
Did he not Sinister?
Jeez, I didn't even mean to do that. Did he not consider Sinister? Blood, I guess? He was like, it's fine.
Yeah, he didn't know that Sinister was going to be able to reform himself when he blew up. But Corsair kind of gives the would you kill Hitler argument of, well, is your honor worth billions of lives?
Mm-hmm. And then Cyclops is like, is yours worth the life of one woman?
Yeah, is the value of one woman's life the fate of the galaxy? Because as much as Corsair is positioning this as we have to stop this madman from destroying other people, Cyclops is also kind of calling him out on it of no, you are doing this in revenge. This is not you just being a hero.
And then, of course, Corsair has a sad Logan moment. He's like, this one was, or something like that, as he's walking away.
Yeah, I think the phrase was, this one was. So over on the Lander ship, Beast is inspecting schematics. Gambit is bored as hell.
because why not?
Yeah. Lalandra is yelling at Jean, like, oh, you need to teleport us. And Jean, she's rebuilding her strength, but she does acknowledge that each time she uses her powers, she gets stronger. I see this as like video game logic of the more times I do something in Skyrim, the better I get at it.
Yeah,
So,
XP, man.
yeah, she just keeps leveling up, and I don't know which tabletop system she's using, but that's a pretty solid one. Over on the ship, Cyclops and Corsair continue their debate of, well, are you going to do this? And Cyclops is like, well, you're really not giving me much choice. And Corsair has the moment with his team of, well, if we fail, you guys have to carry on the mission without me.
And it's like, what? Like what mission? Like without you?
Yeah, without you, we're kind of screwed. And they don't want to let him go off on his own, but he's also like, well, do it, deal with it.
And Corsair and Cyclops have that, fun, ironic conversation.
Yeah, the two sides not knowing about each other, where Corsair acknowledges that he also came from Earth. Scott is wondering how that's possible. And Corsair is like, yeah, I had, kids that I wouldn't know if I saw them. And the oldest one had his mother's eyes, which obviously the greatest irony, because you can't look Cyclops in the eye because you'll get your head force blasted off your shoulders.
Corsair and Cyclops approach Ken while Jean contacts him and teleports the X-Men all there. But before Cyclops can blast Ken, the X-Men appear with the Phoenix. It kind of interrupts the in cold blood moment.
Well, Corsair is presenting the crystal like right at that point, and right as the presentation happens, that's when Phoenix pops in. Corsair sees his chance. He goes after Ken, and it's revealed that it's actually a shapeshifter and not Ken.
Did that shapeshifter have a name? They looked important. Is it just another one of the Imperial
it's
Guards?
One of the Imperial Guards. It's not one of the ones that I know off the top of my head.
Like a split second, I was excited it was going to be like a scroll or something.
Right. No. Yeah. Not that one. But, all of a sudden you get this like big everybody's fighting everybody scenario. The X-Men are doing a pretty good job of holding their own against the Imperial Guard. Gladiator gets over to the crystal first. Wolverine and him have like a little quick interaction, and he just kind of tosses Wolverine like he's nothing. He then gives the like get out of my way woman to Rogue and Rogue just beats the crap out of him. Yeah. And everybody starts to make their way to the Starjammer in their escape with the crystal. Beast is holding the door open for everybody, and then Rogue just kind of like one-ups him.
Well, even better, I think Wolverine tries to start helping, and they're both struggling, Beast and Wolverine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then Rogue just gets there and is like huh.
Yeah.
Yep, no problem. And as they're about to get through the walkway, whatever
that thing is, yeah.
The retractable bridge thing that I don't know what that's actually called. Ken is in their way, and Gladiator is holding Lalandra. And then they start reciting the thing to activate the crystals, which is like 9 dying stars in a world with no name. Jean tries to get the crystal, ends up opening a breach in the crystal, and with the power of the negative galaxy, stuff starts getting like pulled in. Mm-hmm. And that's where we end that episode.
I feel like they mentioned the negative galaxy a couple times.
Right.
But it deserves so much more explanation, because that's just a weighty concept.
I mean, you have the negative zone in Marvel. You have a negatives galaxy now. You have the Anti-Monitor in DC. Just read some comics, right? I don't know what to tell you.
It just sounds like it would be a fun concept to like have explored a little bit more. Although, as we're about to see in a few seconds, we get to explore that. So maybe we do a little bit. But.
Yeah, that was we're just literally running out of time at this point. So part 5, Child of Light. The energy from the crystal is like flowing into Ken. The frame rate drops to 1 per second. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
It's just a PowerPoint.
And he turns into a giant crystal version of himself, proceeds to like try to shoot the X-Men, and Jean creates a shield that stops Ken from like taking everybody out, but he just kind of shrinks into the crystal at that point.
Yeah, his retreats. I guess it's like Genie going to the lamp, except it's not a tiny space.
Yeah, except all of a sudden he becomes more powerful by being inside of it. And they acknowledge that he was granted his wish. He is now one with the crystal, and that he's going to create a universe within the crystal. Corsair radios the rest of the Starjammers on the Starjammer, tells them to leave, and then Jean comes up with a plan of seeing if the Phoenix can actually contain the power of the crystal, and proceeds to teleport everybody onto the Starjammer. And at that point, you get the Imperial Guard are all also retreating on their ship.
Everybody's just, nope.
Jean returns. Jean gets sucked into the crystal. Lilandra is freaking out because she failed. And then all of a sudden you start like seeing these like shock waves coming out of the Macron crystal, and the ships all start getting like sucked back in the direction, like black hole style.
Yeah, they watch the Deken ship like implode.
Yeah, the Imperial ship implodes. People start firing at the crystal.
That's what you do. You just keep shooting stuff.
At that point, that's what I would probably do. And then again, it starts what we picture a black hole to be, of things getting sucked into it. I'm making hand motions again on an audio podcast. Down on Earth, a bunch of environmental disturbances start happening around the world.
But and it starts with Jubilee seeing the sun fade away.
Yeah, that's one of the big ones, is the sun starts fading away. Jubilee is reacting to it, and Professor says, well, there's really just one hope left, and it's the X-Men. And it's like, dude, that's a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, because if you think about it from their perspective, he's just like, we're just going to sit here and wait.
Yeah, like literally nothing else. So over on the Lilandra ship, everything is basically going to shit at this point. Gambit says, well, if the world's going to end, I'm going to go for it. And right as he's about to kiss Rogue, and she looked like she was ready, like she was down, they get sucked into the crystal.
You know, fair enough, though, because do you remember that show Flash Forward? I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't watch it.
I remember the name, but I can't remember the show.
It was basically about everybody passes out at the same time. You get to see your future. And so some people don't see anything. And so that forms a bunch of like sex orgy cults, because everybody knows those
Nope,
people,
definitely don't know that show, Rod.
Those people know, well, it's not just about that, but it's like one group of people know that they're not going to be around in 6 months.
Oh.
So they just start this.
Oh, so the future is, you know where you are in 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
you know where you are in 6 months.
Okay.
So some people are like, they know different situations, but some people see nothing. So they know that they're not going to be around. And whoever friend group I was watching that show with at the time, they're like, what group would you be in? I was like, honestly, if I didn't see anything, I would probably be in the sex orgy group, because what, 6 months? Live your life.
There's no reason to finish school or keep going to work if you're going to be gone in 6 months, right?
So I get Gambit and Rogue.
Yeah.
Get it in, man.
So when they're sucked into the crystal, their ship is like all jacked up, and they're walking out of it. And there's this weird super pink, because it's inside the Macron crystal landscape. And there's these like pulsing muscles. It reminded me of a brain almost.
Yeah, and I got the ego vibe from it, just from the few things I'd seen, but maybe that's because of the living planet.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it was like weirdly organic, is kind of the best way to describe it. Deken appears first. He's this like orb, and then he just becomes full on giant version of Deken.
He kind of does like the apocalypse thing.
Yeah, where he just gets like massive, because he just has all this power. There's a failed charge by Rogue, Wolverine, and Gambit, where props to them for like running into probably what is going to be their death, and then just get whacked away. In the distance, we see Jean's clothes.
I thought she was smushed in the ground. That was just her clothes, though?
I mean, I interpreted it as clothes, but on the top there was the red, and I literally rewound it like 3 times, because it was the color of her hair, but it didn't look like her hair.
Okay.
So I guess that's one of those weird alternate reality bending things where it could be seen in different ways, like we did. Deken pops out of the ground, and just his hands come out and destroy the ship.
Yeah, because he declares he's becoming a living galaxy.
Lilandra takes the diplomatic approach and tries to appeal to him to stop using the crystal. That doesn't work. Gladiator then tries to go for it. That doesn't work. Gladiator's method's not as diplomatic.
Yeah.
And then Scott gives there's nothing we can do against him, which at that point they're pretty much right.
Yeah, because if he controls the reality in this realm.
Now, I know we're going to have a little bit of cameo conversation here. Rod, I know you're excited for cameo. So what are the 4 or 5 spots we see, actually?
So I recognize Mount Fuji.
Because they call it out on the screen.
No, but I recognize who was at Mount Fuji. It was Sunfire.
Right.
Once again, excited that they didn't put a mask on him, just because, nice representation.
Which is just interesting to me, because the character for the longest time has been known to have a mask. So it was a very specific choice to show Sunfire without his mask.
It's very cool. And he's just kind of diffusing the Mount Fuji, literally.
Yeah, there's a train which is going by it, and he's stopping falling rocks from landing on the train. That just in the nick of time, a piece of the track gets knocked out by one of those falling rocks.
Yeah, and then we see Mizhnari. I read the sign. It said he's evacuating an African beach, which I thought was pretty broad.
I mean, it's wherever Mizhnari was. Was that like Tanzania or something like that?
something, yeah, I guess. Or it could be anywhere, I guess.
I mean, the kid is fast enough that he could literally get anywhere within Africa, so that makes sense.
He's evacuating a beach. And then I think I've heard you allude to this trivia before, but we only see the hand of Spider-Man in New York. And I'm guessing that's War Machine.
That is War Machine.
He wasn't in Iron Man colors, but it was an iron suit.
Yes. So yeah, they show Spider-Man's hand, and you see the web shoot out of it. There's like some behind the scenes drama as to why that wasn't fully shown. And then War Machine, and they save a woman. And then we also go to Greece.
So I didn't know this was Greece. I actually thought it was Canada.
Here's the thing. The building looks like the Parthenon.
Okay.
But it was definitely Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
So is there a spot in Canada that looks like the Parthenon?
So you know what's funny is, I don't know about Canada, but I think Nashville has a Parthenon. I'm pretty sure. It has something that doesn't belong there, but is
No, it
odd.
doesn't belong there.
It is odd that it is odd that it's there. It's like a recreation of the Parthenon. But I don't know if that means that there are a few of those around, like some sort of like franchise, like Wonders of the World or something.
I mean, I'm literally not franchised. There is apparently a thing about neoclassical architecture in Canada, drew inspiration from the remains of Greece and Rome. And I'm not clicking on a 60 megabyte PDF to find out more. But yeah, Alpha Flight.
I always get this wrong. So originally my notes, I had Owl Lady, but then because of our previous episode, I recognize this is Snowbird,
right,
and Shaman, which I guess is debatable if they're in Canada or Greece.
Well, apparently we're learning things about Canadian architecture right now.
And then they finish off this whole montage with Storm freaking out in New York. She's thoroughly not okay.
Yeah, well, she literally stops a giant wave from like destroying that same bridge from a few episodes ago, and just is like, well, the Earth has gone mad. Also, they left Storm back on the East Coast when everybody else fucked off to Scotland.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or she went there, or
no, she didn't. Like everything has been happening so fast that she
just gets lost.
Right, and because Xavier and Jubilee are still in fucking Scotland.
Yeah. This is why you go to Scotland if there's a world.
The Imperial Guard also join in on the attack, and they fail. And Rod, did you notice something that was unique about the Imperial Guard at that point?
There were different people.
There was not just different people. There was a random Skrull there.
It was a Skrull.
There was a Skrull there, and there was also a Badoon as well, which is another alien race within Marvel. But there was 100% a Skrull there.
Because I thought that, like, I rewound a little bit to see if I'd missed them before, but it was like a different set of like soldiers essentially.
There were more of them.
Yeah, and this was like, it was almost like the animated version of like Endgame's battle, you know, where it's like, it was so many characters. Like, I know I should know some of these, but
well, to be fair, you don't know most of the Imperial Guard, so I can understand the confusion. But yes, there was definitely a Skrull there who had not been there previously. And then we get a little bit of the classic cartoon villain moment where D'Ken summons these rock soldiers, and it looks like the heroes are starting to like regain the upper hand at that point.
One of the Imperial soldiers wasn't Ant-Man or Giant Man.
So that's Titan, and his powers are similar in that he just can increase in size.
He would have been handy earlier.
Would he? I mean, he gets behind D'Ken and like shatters him, but then it doesn't really stop him.
I mean, just like before they arrived on the crystal.
Oh, just to like crush the X-Men.
Yeah.
So D'Ken, he essentially teleports. Everything starts collapsing around him. And then he starts growing at massive size. And Phoenix is like, no, I'm bigger.
Yeah, she teleports everybody else back to the ship, right?
Well, D'Ken tries to fight her and has no effect on her. And then she teleports everybody to the ship. She's like, there's only one way for this to end, if hopefully my body can take it, and needs to get everybody out of this, essentially.
And she says that she finally realizes the reason that. Well, so this was a little bit, I guess the Phoenix energy is a little vague in how it works if it's actually a sentient being on its own. Phoenix acknowledges, I know why I chose Jean's body because of her empathic abilities.
Yeah, so the Phoenix is a consciousness. The Phoenix has its own set of like instincts and etc. So
I was trying to figure out, so if this was the not Jean speaking about Jean's body, then was it the Phoenix saying that
it's kind of like a We Are Venom moment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's Eddie and the symbiote speaking together. That's what's happening with Jean and the Phoenix. Is the more they are using their powers and bonding, they are becoming one entity. So it's a we scenario, but acknowledge in the past that Jean was a separate entity.
Gotcha.
Right.
And she figures out that she can destroy the crystal by joining the matrix of its energy field, which I don't think we were introduced to earlier.
No, she feels the pain, which is like the living, this orb is the literal living center of the crystal. And she needs to join its matrix is the way to get control over it. And that's what's going to defeat the Kent.
So she starts saying her goodbyes.
Yeah. And Scott obviously wants to stay with Jean, refuses to leave her. And she says, you can't be a part of where I'm going. And then Wolverine gets, his moment of like, yeah, he knows, but that doesn't make any of this any easier. We get the goodbye kiss. And then we get into a little bit of like the whole metaphysical scenario, which, by the way, just to be crystal clear, Jean is speaking from within the crystal to everybody at this point, and they are all on the ship, like reacting to Spacebird. So we get into a little bit of like this metaphysical thing of help me find a way, and then she kind of calls on different aspects of the powers of the various X-Men. Xavier for his wisdom, Storm for her compassion, Beast for his gentleness, Jubilee for her innocence, Wolverine for his courage. And then I couldn't tell without looking at the captions if it was Scott for his love or Scott for his life. And it said love. I had to double check it. Right. And then we get kind of a artsy, like, tree growth image of all the X-Men, including the ones who she didn't get power from, i.e. Rogue and Gambit, who were there with her.
Yeah. It kind of gave, even though I didn't see this in the movie, it kind of gave me an F9 vibe, like it's about family. It was the people she met on the journey.
Yes. Which results in a giant space explosion.
Just like F9.
Right. And they kind of question like, well, she saved us, but what was the cost of it? And Jean, psychically is saying like, I need to take this beyond the reach of any living being. So even though they can't destroy the crystal, she flies it into the heart of the sun, or she's going to fly it into the heart of the sun.
With the cannon trapped in the crystal.
Yeah. And she gives like one last apology to Cyclops before flying in. Her last words are kind of like, again, way more advanced than what a Saturday morning cartoon conversation would be of like the light, if only you could see it. Yeah. And it's kind of this weird extra layer because Scott can't ever see anything without the filter of the visor in front of his eyes too. Because everything with Scott, it's ruby quartz.
Red, yeah.
So he always has red in front of his eyes.
That's why he's always angry.
He's literally always seeing red.
Yeah.
God. Oh, thank God we're wrapping up, guys.
Oh, there's a teaser I picked out for an episode that people will have heard now, but you haven't heard yet, where you almost make a pun, and I love that that's the Instagram teaser.
It's going to be amazing when one week we just don't have an Instagram teaser. Yeah. So apparently they just kept hanging out at Cassidy Keep while all this shit was going down.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Xavier's like, we got to trust the X-Men. Sure.
Yeah. Lalandra, is trying to get Charles to join her because she has to leave and go be the Empress now of the Shi'ar since Ken is out of commission, and Xavier can't go because he has responsibilities that he can't leave. He has to continue leading the X-Men.
Yeah, you got two bosses that can abandon their hustles.
You have, again, the awkward, heartfelt moment between Corsair and Cyclops, who don't know what the other one's history is, essentially.
And I wasn't quite clear on the urgency of leaving. Like, Corsair was like, I wish we could hang out more. And I was like, why couldn't you?
I don't think he actually wanted to hang out more.
Oh, okay,
if I'm being totally honest, like what's he's like, oh, cool, thank you, stranger soldier guy.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't know Scott's his kid, so why would he? He's like, Galaxy's gonna be a fucking disaster. I better go out there and start like looting people.
And to be fair, the way they're animated, they look roughly the same age, so it's not like he would suspect he was his son.
We have the awkward moment with Wolverine, who has the infamous picture
of Jean and Scott together
with the hole in it in the middle of it. I love how one animation literally had it cut in half, and then all the other ones have had the hole. So,
and Lalandra has like a little bit of a foreshadowing. I almost went Jersey there, like foreshadowing moment.
Hey, fuck you! Just because you say foreshadowing, fuck you, Rod.
Foreshadowing moment. She says that they'll meet again,
and then it wraps up with Professor X going to Cyclops, trying to comfort him as he's looking at the sun setting, and he tries to bring up the the legend of the Phoenix, and Cyclops kind of doesn't want to hear it. And he's like, well, the whole thing about the Phoenix is no matter what, the Phoenix always rose again. And that was a symbol of hope that never dies. Mm-hmm. And then there was a very specific animation choice where when you look at Scott's visor, you actually saw his eyes through the visor.
Okay. And I remember the tears too.
Yeah. And it was because anytime we've seen the angle of the visor, and I don't know if maybe there's the logic of it being at the sunset and the different colors hitting him, but you actually saw his eyes through the visor. And that's the only time up to this point we have seen that, aside from when he didn't have his powers.
Yeah. So while he was powered, you can see his eyes.
Yeah. And then final notes about this episode before I let Rod toss in some stuff. This actually has 3 episodes that got delayed until season 5 following it because of animation issues.
Wait.
So if you like, there were character moments that if you watched in broadcast order, absolutely don't make sense in the following episodes.
Oh, okay. So the other episodes that happened before and the way we watched it didn't happen in the real time thing. Gotcha.
Yeah. Just for example, the next episode, which is considered episode 34, didn't appear until 1996.
Jeez.
Right.
2 years later.
Right. Yeah. September of 96. So literally 2 years later, and aired in episode order of airing at number 66.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then there was a great quote from Eric when he was talking about the writers, Mark and Michael, who helped him write this epic, and said, it was just like old times in college in Tennessee. The 3 of us worked the story out together. I don't think we or X-Men the Animated Series ever did it better. So if you want to interpret that, I would say this is his favorite set of episodes that they've done.
This is what I remember. I know I've spoke highly of Days of Future Past and everything, but I would venture to say that most people remember the Phoenix Saga most from the animated series.
For me, I don't know what it was that was going on in my life, but I don't remember watching this a lot. I definitely remember so much of season 1 and 2. But season 3, I started falling off for whatever reason. Yeah. And
I don't remember if it was necessarily like a favorite or we saw it the most. It was the important thing, I guess. Maybe it was because it was the week. I don't remember it being the week-long thing, but once again, who knows what your time frame is as a kid, but it was such a big deal. And if I did rewatch it like in college or whatever, rewatch the animated series, we usually skip to the Phoenix Saga or like 1 or 2 specials or something, but this one is a 5-part, like stood on its own. And I stand by my thing. If they want to make a movie and they don't want to put in like the extra effort, just use this as a storyboard and do this. There's more ridiculous things you put your money into.
I mean, literally the second time they did Dark Phoenix, it was it was the Captain Marvel story, copycatted. Like Matt Pat said it amazingly. They literally just took the story and just put the Thing instead of Skrulls.
Yeah, and in the same year that Captain Marvel came out.
Yeah. Rod, we have gone through many pages of notes and talked for a while. Do you have any closing thoughts around this, aside from just how much it had a pretty meaningful impact on you, it sounds like?
Yeah, pretty much just that. And I think that just amplifies why so many fans are so disappointed in the two times Fox tried to do the Phoenix Saga.
Well, the funny thing is we've only talked about the Phoenix Saga, that we haven't gone to the Dark Phoenix yet. And that's the one where Fox really shit the bed. I mean, I think the funny thing is I've never read the Phoenix story. I've only read the Dark Phoenix aspect of it.
That's true. I guess we'll see once we get to the Dark Phoenix Saga, which is very soon.
Yeah, I think we're 5 episodes away from that or something like that. Yeah.
That maybe that's arguably what I remember as far as, because Phoenix Saga and Dark Phoenix Saga kind of meld together to me, like just the overall story and stuff.
Right.
But I think it's just one of those tent poles of X-Men mythology. But yeah, I love it. Also, it's like the second time we thought we lost someone permanently, like where there's stakes.
Yeah, I mean, and then to your point, episode 1 losing Morph, and we didn't find out we had him back until season 2, and now she literally just flew into the sun.
Yeah, and this one is arguably harder hitting because we've lived with her for 2.5 seasons.
Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload, the official Instagram post about this episode. Fuck it, leave comments on TikTok. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or CastBox. I'm not looking up any more podcast services. Oh, and ironically, I was listening to the episode that just aired where I shouted out the fact that Facebook has podcasts within the mobile app the week after we found out that feature was going away.
Nice.
Yep. So remember,
keep checking it out.
We record stuff in batches.
Ready to fly into the sun?
At this point.
Okay.